Board of Supervisors Zoom meeting for June 10th, 2020. We are called to order. A call for a moment of silence. And again, even though we're coming out of this little by little, let's still remember those families that have been affected by the virus. Also, give praise to the nurses, doctors, first responders, the police, fire, EMTs, and for now, those who serve your food and may bring your food to the car at curbside pickup, and also those that are picking up our trash daily or every other day, whichever it may be. We are getting through this. We'll come back stronger, and everything hopefully will get back to normal, or how we see normal in the near future. If everybody would just say pledge allegiance to the flag now. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I guess some housekeeping needs to be addressed. We did intend to have the Zoom with participants, but unfortunately our Zoom original address was bombed, unfortunately. But we still will be accepting any questions from any resident on any concern via email. So if anyone is listening out there, we're still having email participation. Mr. Lewis, any changes or additions to the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, there was 3 changes to the agenda. Item 11, that was originally 11A2, has been added. Item 13B2 has been added, and item 8 has been moved up from under item 13C on the previous agenda.
Mr. Lewis, do we have any public comment?
Yes, I have 2 public comment, Mr. Chairman, at this time. The first is from Jennifer Vostinas, no address. At the peaceful protest, there were several pickup trucks repeatedly speeding through the intersection, revving their engines and clearly trying to intimidate protesters. This was reckless and unsafe. Was any action taken to identify or pursue these individuals? I'll defer to the police chief on that. Maybe he can give a brief explanation of what, if anything, was done during his report. Second is from Doug Campbell, 51 Richborough Road. He's been a resident at this location since 1986, and he has a concern over non-permitted outdoors eating space. I'm assuming that is for the restaurant located at 50 Richborough Road.
And that has been taken care of, correct?
Yes.
Okay. For the time being.
For the time being, right.
Okay. Is that it for now for public comment?
All I have as of right now.
Okay. I guess we'll go into the police report. Chief Hearn? Chief out there? He's on mute. No picture.
And we're working on it. There you go.
There you go. Go ahead, Chief.
Good evening, board members. The May 2020 police report. We logged in just over 24,000 miles during routine patrol. We documented 1,449 calls for service. As you know, we're still under the COVID-19 stay-at-home orders, which was effective 3/13. Regardless of that, though, we still had 8 arrests, 1 involving a weapons, firearms violation, and fleeing police, 2 terroristic threats. They were computer crimes, 1 possession of narcotics, 1 retail theft, and 3 DUIs, 1 of which was a multi-vehicle crash on Swamp Road. There were 21 new cases referred to detectives, 38 traffic crashes, resulting in only 1 injury. We issued 65 traffic citations and 27 warnings were issued. Although the state of emergency on March 13th was still in effect, we had a dramatic increase in traffic-related issues and began proactively addressing them immediately. There were 3 key jobs that occurred this on the month of May. One was a fraud for $39,000. Just I'm encouraging the public not to give out personal information or to buy gift cards for anyone you do not know. This is to protect you and yourself and your family. As I mentioned before, on 5/14, we had a vehicle investigation conducted by one of our officers. We noticed a firearm inside the vehicle, and the vehicle fled at a high rate of speed. That vehicle was pursued. It was terminated due to the safety of the community, but we subsequently arrested the male by warrant at a later time. And we had one overdose death of a 28-year-old male from our community. The other thing I would just like to mention as part of my public service announcement, I want to speak directly to the community, since this is on tape and most of our members aren't here right now due to the Zoom issue. But the Newtown Township Police Department would like to thank all of our residents and businesses who have supported us through the ongoing COVID-19 crisis and the recent incidents of protests and civil arrests that are occurring throughout the country. It is very reassuring to our employees, especially the police officers on the street, to know that they are supported by the community they serve. The tragic death of Mr. Floyd is unacceptable, and our hearts and prayers go out to Mr. Floyd's family. The actions of the officers were wrong, and those involved are not representative of the police profession, especially here at Newtown Township. The civil unrest, including the destruction of property and assaults on law enforcement, are also not representative of the public that we serve. Together, we can and must strive to eliminate both. This past week, both at the Garden of Reflection and the center of Newtown, a peaceful vigil and protest was held in both Lower Makefield and Newtown, with many of our neighbors and families attending. We support these initiatives and the right to peacefully protest. Your police officers, along with other local police departments, worked to ensure the safety of the participants. In the end, the streets were left clean, no acts of violence occurred, and no damage to property was reported. Our officers were thanked by the many for their professionalism and for their assistance during both of these events. The Newtown Township Police Department takes great pride in our reputation in our community as we protect and serve Newtown Township. With that pride comes the weight we bear to maintain a professional police department that abides by the best practices of law enforcement and ensure that equal protection is had. One of the ways in which we accomplish this is by maintaining our accreditation status. The commission initially granted this status to this department back in 2013. We are reevaluated every 3 years. We just received our reaccreditation in July of 2019. Our accreditation status is a source of pride for this department because there are over 1,100 police departments in the state of Pennsylvania. Newtown Township is one of only 117 that are currently certified. As part of our accreditation standards and also our department policy, we train at least annually on use of force and deadly force policies. We also have bias-based policing policy that requires an administrative annual review of all data to agency compliance of our policing directive. The topics of and policy against bias-based policing is trained on the department and also included in our field training program for all our new hires. As your chief of police, I keep apprised of the current events that involve law enforcement communities and strive to maintain a community-based policing approach in order to allow for the residents of Newtown Township who have a trust in our department. I frequently hold coffee with a cop events and other community programs where we can hold a conversation and mitigate any issues. I encourage you all to attend. As chief, I always communicate teachable moments to the officers. And the current events involving George Floyd is an example of one of those moments that was immediately addressed with our department. Our training teaches us not only to do better, but to be held to a higher standard. It is my responsibility as the chief to ensure all our officers exceed those expectations. We do not tolerate racial bias, discrimination, or unjust use of force in this department. These certainly are challenging times that the country is faced with. That being said, the Newtown Township Police Department will continue to provide a high level of professionalism to the community that they deserve. And we will continue our work to protect the citizens, the business, the property owners of this community, and the visitors that we love. We will always continue to train and strive to be the best that we can in order for the community to continue to have faith in us. We need our community to talk and listen to us, to each other, to get to know each other, to value each other, to respect each other, and build on that. Only then will we truly succeed. We will continually uphold the constitutional rights of all persons and honor our oath of office while asking for your continued support. As Pope Francis mentioned on his speech on June 3rd, we cannot tolerate or turn a blind eye to racism and exclusion in any form, and yet claim to defend the sacredness of every human life. At the same time, we have to recognize that violence of recent nights is self-destructive and self-defeating. Nothing is gained by violence, and so much is lost. We're all in this together. We're one mission, one team. I'm there for you, and I'll support you 110%. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay. Any questions? Can I just ask everyone to mute themselves while someone else is talking, because you can hear background noise coming from whoever is not. Any questions for the chief while he's here?
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
I would like to thank the chief for that, and especially I think I and many other people have noticed at these demonstrations in Newtown and at the Garden of Reflection that the chief made it a point to circulate among the people there. I think he was probably the only one to do that, and he interacted with many residents, and I really think the whole situation was handled quite well. And I know I've talked to the chief before about you know, more community-based policing, and he's often mentioned to me that he used to have these town hall meetings. And in his presentation today, Chief, you mentioned about communication, getting to know each other, talking, and so on. And I think if we could have some kind of a town hall meeting with the representatives of the community there, as well as police officers, with the goal of you know, having these conversations out in the open and people getting to know each other, as you mentioned, would be a good idea. I know that you have done this in the past. I believe you told me in Philadelphia when you were working down there, I guess. And the only caveat was, can we get people to attend such a town hall meeting? And I think we can. And what I would like to propose is that we have a planning session that we can get together, maybe a couple of supervisors, township manager and the police chief, and a couple of representatives from the community, and have a planning session where we can plan what this town hall might look like, when we might be able to do it, and to bring a proposal back to the Board of Supervisors so that we can actually schedule this. And I know that would be much appreciated by the community.
Okay. Chief, you agree to this situation here?
Yes, like John actually mentioned, I used to have town halls in my former command status.
Is everyone muted?
I believe in getting the public together. The interest of the public is paramount for that. I can't have the meeting come just to be a gripe session. It's got to be a constructive session where I can actually have the opportunity to engage. People have to talk. People have to also listen. By doing that, I think everybody understands each other's side of the coin, and we can actually formulate it into one unit, moving Newtown Township further. I don't have a problem with that. Unfortunately, though, due to COVID, we may have to postpone it until the green light goes into operation, sir.
Yeah, I think the best idea is to have it when we can actually meet in person. Nothing beats meeting people in person. And one of the reasons why I want this planning session behind the scenes is so that we can lay down the ground rules and, make sure that people know what the ground rules are. And I think there are a lot of people out there that just would appreciate having a constructive conversation and get to know more of our police force, because I do believe that, we have a great community, and we want to keep it that way. And I appreciate what you've been trying to do with community outreach. And unfortunately, because of this COVID-19, you haven't been able to have a coffee with a cop, but I think the town hall will be an expanded version of coffee with a cop. And I hope that we can work that out.
Okay. Along with Mr. Mack, what other supervisor would like to volunteer for this? I don't see anybody volunteer.
I'd be happy to do that, Mr.
Okay,
Chairman.
so Mr. Mack and Mr. Oxley can coordinate this. Excellent. Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, may I make a comment, please?
Sure, go right ahead.
Thank you. I have to share with the group here that I support Chief Hearn, everything he's done so far. I actually had a conversation with him in his office about 2 weeks ago where I reached out to him, and he was happy to meet with me right away to discuss my concerns, discuss what was going on currently in the country, and he put me at ease. He made me feel comfortable. He was very clear and direct and candid with me about if I ever have a challenge, or if anyone ever has a challenge he hears about, his door is always open. He's always willing to listen and see how we can make things better for our community. I support Newtown Township Police, and I'm confident that they will continue to do well for us. So let's make sure that in these town halls that we're talking about, that we talk about constructive ways to make things better if something is out of whack. But in terms of where we are, I'm really happy with what we have. Let's continue to support our Township Police Department. Let's also make sure that we're aware that not every single police officer is a bad person. We have good cops, obviously, in our township. We should be thrilled about that. And we should be thrilled about their accreditation and their training. And let's make sure that we continue to support them. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
And Mr. Chairman, if I just may say one word, and basically I could say one word, thanks. I was part of the organizational committee for the vigil at the Garden of Reflection, and one of the things I said is we have to invite the chiefs of police and as official attendees, and the chief was there along with a lot of his colleagues across at least Central Bucks anyway, and it was very powerful, and just have to say thank you to that and everything that John and David has already said.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. Kyle?
Yeah, if I may, thanks, Phil. Chief, I just want to say I'm proud to be associated with you and your team, and thank you for your statement there, reminding us of all the things that you actively do continuously to ensure your department holds to a higher standard of excellence. So thank you, and keep up the good work, and we'll continue to be proud of you guys. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Chief, you're a credit to Newtown, and I always say Newtown Police Force is second to none. And also, I have to give you a lot of credit because you guys are eating very well nowadays. I always see the pictures of the food that you're getting, and it makes me kind of jealous. But
That's because of the tremendous support we have in the community. They're awesome. And just one other thing, Phil. Michael had that question regarding them trucks that were running through the vigil. They actually were stopped and investigated. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. And we appreciate everything you do. We're proud to have you as our police chief.
Thank you, sir.
Now, unless you want to hang out, you're free to go.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thanks, Chief. Take care. Okay. Let's see. Moving right along here. I guess we're up to our 5-year financial plan update from ESI and Mr. Dan Conley. Sir, you're up.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you this afternoon and give a little update on our activities to date and talk about the timeline going forward. Included in your board package should be just a handful of slides. This isn't, it certainly isn't a comprehensive listing of everything we've been doing, and we're not in position to talk about recommendations at this point.
Dan, not to interrupt, but Micah, can you put those slides, can you share those slides with the board right now, or?
Yeah, I'm working on it. Hang on one sec.
Okay. Just so we have a visual of. Your slides didn't get bombed, did they? Okay, thanks.
There we go.
Thank you. Okay, Dan.
Sure. And like I said, put together just a handful of slides for a brief update. We're not in a position to make recommendations right now, but wanted to give you an idea of what we've been up to and what the next steps are as we continue on this engagement and prepare for a final report in the August timeframe. So if you want to go to the next slide, I'm not. Do I control this or you control this, Micah?
I got it, Dan.
All right, thanks.
Let me know next slide and I'll shift down.
Great. Well, in the last couple of months, we began our engagement with financial conditions assessment and trends analysis. As we described to you when we met with the supervisors back in January, I believe it was, we start with a baseline financial forecast, and we develop that forecast based on current trends. Rather than looking at a single year of general fund and operating activity, we take a look 5 years back to 2015 and see how revenues and expenses are moving. That enables us to identify the factors that have led to the current situation and do a projection going forward. Of course, almost immediately after we were engaged, the COVID crisis broke out, which kind of turns projections upside down. The 5-year look back did not all of a sudden become irrelevant, certainly not, but it seemed a little bit backwards to think about 5 years down the road without looking even 5 months down the road. So we shifted gears a little bit. It's not our typical approach to these engagements, but we thought for the township that the most useful thing we could do is try to help with a near-term cash projection. So we've provided a couple different versions of monthly cash projections between now and the end of the year. Also part of this engagement is a review of the township's operations. And we've been reviewing financial information related to each department, met with department heads, met with union leaders, met with almost all the supervisors, and we want to keep those communication lines open. So we're taking as much information as we can into this process. You want to move on, Micah? So a quick slide on historical revenues and expenses. These are expenditures and revenues. Expenditures including transfers that almost entirely are comprised of transfers for capital needs. You can see since 2015, there's only been 1 year where revenues have exceeded the combined expenditures and transfers. Relatively flat revenue growth over that time. And actually operating revenues operating expenditures have been relatively stable as well. It's not like we've seen super above inflation growth in expenses, but it's been the increases in transfers to the capital fund actually that has put the most pressure on this sort of situation. The general fund, as everybody's aware, is heavily reliant on the earned income tax, and there's no real estate tax millage that supports the general fund. There's, of course, like a combined 4.5 mils that supports several other funds. So, and on the operating cost side, the last bullet, the workforce has received steady pay increases and health benefit costs continue to grow. And that's kind of baked into almost every single municipal budget. Expenditures comprise, I think, 82%, just adding up of total general fund costs. So that's the primary cost driver. But again, those aren't necessarily out of control. It's just we have a revenue situation that's not keeping pace with expenditures and capital needs. The mismatch between revenues and expenses has put pressure on fund balance. Looking back to 2015, the township was in a very strong fund balance position, between 25 and 30% of operating fund balance equaled between 25 and 30% of operating revenues. But it's been declining over time, and the budget this year was just about enough to meet the township's fund balance policy, which is a minimum of 8%. The Gfoa, and there are other benchmarks out there that we can point to, generally recommends 2 months of operating expenses as a fund balance position. And the fund balance and having a weaker fund balance has put the township in kind of a weaker spot to deal with COVID-related impacts this year. We can move on to the cash projection in a minute, but it's with a stronger fund balance, maybe you'd be facing tougher decisions, or maybe sleeping a little bit better at night about what may or may not come in the next few months. You can move on, Micah. All right, now this was a cash projection I know the supervisors had the chance to look at, and I think we touched on briefly with almost all of our meeting when we were able to meet with you all. This was a projection done in May 8th, and my colleague Alex Sullivan is on with me too. We were debating about even doing another projection before this meeting, but we said, hey, let's, we've already given the supervisors 2 sets of numbers. Let's walk through this schedule. But I think one of the points here is this is a very unique time, once in a century pandemic. No municipality in the country has had to deal with something like this and forecast out what might happen. So things are changing on a week to week, even day-to-day basis sometimes. So everything needs to be refined and looked at as we go. As we set this up with first establishing a baseline of cash receipts and expenditures. And the baseline is based on your 2020 budget with first 2 or 3, I think through March, year-to-date actual numbers. So we took your budget and we had the treasurer's reports and we're able to incorporate that into annual revenues. Baseline expenses were based on the same. You budgeted the use of fund balance to cover the difference between revenues and expenses, and that's where we ended up. Rolling in the COVID-related impacts, again, 60% of your general fund relying on EIT makes you more sensitive to those fluctuations than other municipalities. Based on not just economic-related changes or reduced activity in the near term, reduced to business closures, people not going to work, but also timing related changes. We've learned more about the timing of when EIT is your earned income taxes are collected over time, over the last month or two than we thought we'd ever know. Our baseline projection projected out 11% reduction between now and the end of the year. And that's based on unemployment claims that have come through. It also assumes a little bit of a recovery in the second half of the year. We also assume an reduction in other cash receipts. So moving down that middle column there, you see on a gross dollar basis, it projects out a reduction in EIT of almost $750,000 and other cash receipts of about $567,000. And that would put you in a very tight year-end cash position. And we've been in touch with Micah throughout this process, and he has relayed some of the corrective actions that had been put in place and some that could be considered if things do turn out to be as bad or worse than expected. So that third column incorporates about $760,000 of quote unquote corrective action, which would improve your bottom line year-end cash position. Not to caveat too much, but again, it needs to be revisited on a regular basis as the economy reopens and we are able to digest the actual impacts of the COVID crisis. Before we move on, well, here we got some of, it's okay, we could go on to that slide, Micah, because I think in the original package that we sent to, that the supervisors saw, that didn't have all of our assumptions. But it assumes, first of all, we did this on a monthly basis too. What you saw in that summary slide was just the year-end impact, but since the township relies so heavily on EIT, and EIT can go up, there are 4 big collection months. It's not like a township or a municipality that relies heavily on real estate taxes where you get a big chunk in March and April, and that carries you through the rest of the year. We wanted to examine to make sure that, because of the nature of the timing of the cash flows, you weren't going to hit an unexpected cash shortfall in, say, September or October. And we didn't see that. The low point in the collection was going to be at the end of December, so we just showed the year end there. But our cash projection did take into account some delays in collections between April and July, and the extended deadlines for Q1 filings, and decreased tax generating activity for 2020 and into 2021. And another point I want to make sure we make during this presentation is when you approach the 2021 budget, even if we had a full recovery, even if on January 1st we magically go back to a 2019 economy and employment level, you will still see 2021 budget impacts because of individuals filing their EIT reports based on their 2020 wages. So there will be a negative EIT impact in 2021 as well. I'm happy to address any questions you might have. This is a projection that we can help update as we move on in this process. Since there's a lot of information there, I just wanted to make sure that everybody had the chance to ask about it.
Are we finished with the presentation and the slides, or?
I think we had one last slide that discussed next steps.
Okay.
We're continuing with the operations review, what remaining interviews we have. We're going to develop our multi-year financial projections baseline. That's going to assume that some level of recovery and maintaining the existing level of township services. What's the cost to run the township as is? And then the revenue side right now is a little bit trickier, but the expenses will be based on a baseline of existing level of services. We have drafted, we'll share a citizen survey to collect feedback on what the citizens prioritize as their service levels and what they think the quality of those service levels are. And we're going to conduct a public meeting to solicit input and within the next few weeks. Our timing is, right now we're looking at August timeframe to deliver a final report, and we can deliver publicly the highlight, 3 or 4 big findings and recommendations of that report at a public meeting in August.
Okay, Thanks, Dan. Questions for Dan?
I have a question. If you can delve a little bit more deeply into the EIT, which is so very important. We were talking at the Finance Committee yesterday about this impact, especially how local businesses and non-resident EIT, the impact of that on the revenue side. I'm not quite sure, you know, if we got a clear idea, for example, how important local businesses are to the 11% reduction that you mentioned in EIT. Can you explain that? Maybe put some more numbers with regard to local economy?
Sure. Mike, are you able to unmute my colleague, Alex Sullivan, too, who's really, she can add in here as well. First of all, as a whole, the township has seen an overall decline in non-resident EIT over the last 5 years. You know, in the 2015, 2016, 17 timeframe, this is probably attributed to Lockheed, but even since then, it hasn't returned to those levels. The township has a high concentration of restaurants and service industry type businesses, which would have a lot of non-resident employees there. Now, those non-residents will, if their home municipality has an EIT, their home municipality always received it. So the township is impacted to the extent on just a general fund revenue perspective, to the extent that most of those, those employees or those workers live in a municipality that doesn't have an EIT. So
I guess if you assume that is the best case scenario, is the impact of those employees being out of work for however months it has been, is that represent a large portion of what we might expect as a decrease in EIT for the year?
I think most of the decrease is with residents of Newtown itself, and the numbers that we base most of the analysis on is based on unemployment claims in the local zip code. Because you know, even if you have a Newtown resident that works out of Newtown, you're going to, that Newtown resident is generating EIT income for the township.
Right, so you're saying that there is quite a substantial number of people, residents of Newtown itself, that are unemployed.
But you know, it's Newtown isn't doing as bad as some places, but most of the negative implications for the EIT revenues will be from the Newtown residents themselves.
Okay, one other question. What about, I'm just curious about the other cash receipts, which you had an 8% reduction. I'm just wondering about the real estate transfer tax, which mostly has to do, I guess, with new home sales and with the new developments coming in, land sales that have been delayed, for example. Are those included in your other cash receipts?
Yes, and I can pull up the real estate transfer taxes. Alex, do you have the exact reduction of that piece? You know, most of that reduction is attributed to the recreational services and those revenues, anticipating that those programs will not be going forward. There's some revenues on that side that, COVID or not, you're going to get. State pension aid, you're going to get that. We hope, right? You know, pilot revenues, we didn't say that was COVID impacted. The primary component of that piece was the recreation type revenues, and frankly, the first reaction to dealing with that would be recreation services as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
I just want, since we're talking about EIT and the reliance there, we talked about non-resident going down. As more municipalities implement their own resident EIT, you know, that's only going to put more pressure on that for the township. You can see no employment losses at all, but
Just saying facetiously, I always say we need a big company from New Jersey coming in, because this way we could keep all the EIT. But it's true. I mean, we've had Ben Salem cut into our, I mean, even a small municipality like Uneville has instituted a EIT, which has taken a few $1,000s away from us. So as these other townships catch on that EIT is a good way to collect some funds, it's going to dip into our revenue stream unless we do get some kind of big outfit like Lockheed Martin to occupy that building again, and with high paid individuals. But otherwise, our EIT in the future may diminish as time goes on, correct?
yes, that'll definitely be putting more pressure on EIT.
And in regards to the real estate transfer tax, that does also include the resales of current homes, not just the new properties, of which we're coming to a wall on that too. I think we got 2 developments in the process right now. I mean, the only other thing we do have, I think I mentioned in the past, is we do have a large working farm. If he were to sell that, that would be a large tract of land also. But we have to realize that we're going to probably hit the wall in regards to new development. So we have to find a way to, I guess, promote people to come into Newtown to purchase resale properties and to get the transfer tax from that also.
Yeah, to offset that. I mean, again, you know, really transfer tax it isn't the main budget driver in the budget, but certainly there's kind of a flattening at max going on with that revenue source. And if you have operations, you know, the cost of doing business every year, it's going to go up, you know, as long as employees are getting raises and health benefit costs go up. You have to match that revenue growth with that expenditure.
Hey, Dan, I may have missed this, but on your short-term cash projections, where it says corrective action $760,000. Now, that number is based upon what your firm is thinking about making reductions, correct?
Micah, do you want to?
Those numbers are based on numbers that I gave to ESI.
Okay.
Those numbers are cutting out certain capital projects that we had not started yet.
Okay.
Not replacing certain positions that had since retired, and not hiring additional staff for summer camps or for maintenance of public works facilities.
Okay, I got you. Thank you.
We have a few finance committee members here. I don't know if they have any questions for Dan, and if so, now's the time.
In the meantime, if I may ask a couple of real easy questions.
Sure.
One is, what does Gfoa stand for?
Government Financial Officers Association. By the way, sometimes the easiest questions are the hardest ones. So.
And did I miss, how long do you think it'll be before you are able to present your recommendations?
We'll deliver a final report in August, and we'll have a draft report prior to that.
Okay.
This is Mark Boda. I'm a member of the Finance Committee. May I ask a question?
Turn on your camera.
Let's see how I do that. Start my video. Okay. I'm a real dunce when it comes to these systems. I have to go to my settings. Phil, I don't know if I can do it.
Now at the bottom, it should say stop video, start video. Just you click on that if you can.
Hold on a second.
Bottom of your screen.
Yeah, I got to enlarge the screen. And
All right, go ahead, ask your question.
All right.
No problem.
I want to know if there is a state mandated ratio for the general fund to budgetary expenditures.
There's nothing state mandated, not that I'm aware of. It's all internal policy driven. You know, there are a number of industry benchmarks out there. I gave them one from the Government Financial Officers Association. If you know, some municipalities kind of peg their policy or develop their policy based on like a credit rating target or objective. I personally think sometimes municipalities put too much emphasis on what the rating agencies tell them to do, but there's no state mandate that I'm aware of.
Well, as a follow-up then, could you just clarify where the 8% figure comes from?
The 8% figure is the township's own fund balance policy.
And do you have a anything to say about the connection between credit rating and the ratio?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think the credit rating agencies would like to see something higher than that. You know, 2 months worth of expenditures is I think, generally the benchmark that a municipality should strive for. So again, you know, doing exactly what the credit rating agencies say. So maybe you could save 5 basis points on your next debt transaction. You know, you don't want to let the tail wag the dog there. But the GFOA standard is, I think, pretty good.
One last question, just to clarify. If 2 months of expenditures is a generally healthy number as far as the credit rating agencies go, in our case, that would mean a general fund of $2 million. Is that about right?
Yeah, the total general fund is about 12.5 or so. So yeah, it's about $2 million.
Thank you.
12 million bucks, $1 million a month, right? 2 months.
Right.
So,
Thank you.
I have a question. This is Jen B.
Okay, can we see you?
Somebody's blocking my video.
There you go.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
perfect.
So I'm on the Newtown Finance Committee and the Communications Planning Group as well. And I'm wondering if in your scope of service, you have best practices that you can help us with when we do the citizen survey.
Sure. Well, we've developed a survey that's been used in that we've used in other municipalities. It's you know, this isn't necessarily like a survey project. It's not 100 questions, but we have something that's been used effectively in other municipalities, and it's based on surveys that have been used in other places as well.
Will we be able to get a copy of that ahead of time, since we need to plan a communication strategy for that?
We're happy to provide
Great.
you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Phil, if I may, could I ask one more question? It's Mark Boda.
All right, you're pushing your luck, Mark.
I know. I follow your example though, Phil. Just one other question. I was surprised to hear that you're, Mr. Connolly, that you're planning to have a public meeting in a couple of weeks to solicit input. You know, given the restrictions on meetings, could you explain how you'd make that happen, and also what kind of information you're looking for from people?
Sure. We haven't scheduled it yet, in part because the logistics issue. A public meeting is a standard part of all these engagements, because we think it's important for the public to weigh in on what's important to them, what they think could be improved, what they've been seeing in their local municipality, and where they want to see it go. And that's basically what we ask for their feedback on. But we'll tee it up with a little bit of all right, this is what's been happening going forward, to put everything into context. based on, your experience here as a resident or a business owner or a community leader or whatever, what ideas do you have for the township going forward? When I talked to Micah about doing this public meeting, he actually suggested a finance committee meeting that's open to the public, that we can do it. And frankly, I want to do it in a way that we could get the most public participation. And the COVID is a big curveball to that. We're happy to come out there and do it in public, even if it means waiting another month or whatever.
Well, I believe that Micah has a plan for setting up the meeting room to be compliant with current guidelines in terms of maximum number of people and social distancing and so forth. We can get at least 25 people into the room on the basis of other public meetings that we've had that would seem like a pretty good number. And especially maybe if it were broadcast with people able to send in questions by email or conference call or whatever, we might make it happen if you want to go that route.
That all sounds like a plan to me. Again, I haven't had to, I haven't even been to my actual office since all this broke out. So in terms of what's appropriate from a distancing point of view and all, and what's allowed, that sounds like a plan. Maybe it goes beyond this little conversation here, but if that's what's feasible, we can work with that.
Well, a lot of people have been telling me, you guys got to have these kinds of meetings. It's enough already with Zoom bombing and all that. The technical issues are besetting our township. We're not able to really have an interactive public meeting this way. So, I'm all in favor of, risking a little bit to get the public involved. And I think by the time we get it organized, there'll be public willing to go out into the public again.
Okay. I know Dan has another meeting to go to, so any other quick questions for him?
Just a clarification, with the survey, there's a written component to it or an digital component to it, as well as having a meeting, or is it one or the other?
No, it's both. We'll make it available online, and we can distribute through your social media outlets. We can provide paper copies in Township Hall for folks who want to participate but don't use online services. Then we'll have a separate public meeting.
Got it. I just wanted to make sure I heard it right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dan and Alex. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Let's see here. Reports of committees, boards, and commissions. I think Mr. Fiddler, you still awake? Alan?
Yes, I am.
Oh, there you go.
Like my
Okay.
video.
Excellent.
All right. That's very interesting. I don't envy you your task at this revenue stream issue. I'm here to present you with the June 2nd, 2020 synopsis of the Newtown Township Planning Commission. We again spent the evening reviewing the proposed JMZO amendment for the E30 convenience store / fueling station. Mr. Shankman reviewed the process for new use to be included in the jointure and provided an update and explanation of the curative amendment. Ms. Fountain reviewed the revised ordinance based on the suggestions and comments of the Planning Commission. The main change was the removal of the use in the OLI and the LI districts, leaving the use permissible only in the OR district in Newtown. Some other notable changes were the lot size will be a minimum of 4 acres. There'll there'll be 6 fueling dispensers allowed, which equals to the service for a total of 12 vehicles at a time, and in the OR district only. If minimum lot size requirements are met, they can be a maximum of 8 fueling dispensers. Wording was changed to clarify the street locations and the visual screenings, as well as a revision to include an inventory of private and public wells within 3,500 feet of the proposed use. A statement on the effect of development on the water supply and watershed, along with all proposed safeguards to be used at the facility, is also required. It was determined by us that the next step is to provide the Board of Supervisors with the revised ordinance for review at your next convenient meeting. Basically, that was our only agenda item for the evening.
Alan, you want to give any kind of report on what happened at the JMZO since you and I guess Jerry was there and Michelle?
Jerry was there via Zoom. I also was there. From my memory, the only discussion points that were made were regarding Wrightstown Township's Planning Commission's review of the ordinance. They were not made available to us prior to the meeting, and that was because that report from the Planning Commission of Wrightstown went to their Board of Supervisors, and Chester had indicated that not every recommendation from the Planning Commission that they received was endorsed by their current Board of Supervisors. And he indicated that they would respond to those comments and get back to the jointure partners through their solicitor. Jerry, is that accurate about what took place that evening?
Mostly, the only thing I would add is that it really was not an official meeting because there was no quorum. There was no representative from Newtown present. No supervisor was present to cast a vote. So it was not an official meeting. And we indicated that our supervisors would be dealing with our review of the ordinance at the next work session, which I believe is next Monday. And then we can, when the board votes, that we can present our position to the jointure.
Any questions for Alan or Jerry?
Yes, you mentioned that only in the OR district is the current draft now allowing 8 fueling dispensers, which would serve 16 vehicles at a time. Is that correct?
That's if they have a 4-acre or larger lot.
Right. Well, when Wawa came in to us, they want to build in the OR at the bypass, which I believe is more than 4 acres. And that's exactly what they wanted. However, the Planning Commission in the past, our Planning Commission, has proposed a maximum of 4 fueling stations and 8 vehicles. Is that correct?
That's correct. And the reason that the Planning Commission entertained the suggestion by Ms. Fountain is of the curative amendment challenge. In that amendment, they're requesting 16 fueling stations. We were proposing 6 or 8. And I think the general consensus of the professional staff was that we have to placate to some degree the curative amendment requests to get a negotiated withdrawal of the suit. They won't accept 6 stations or.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm getting confused. The Wawa original proposal was 16 fueling dispensers that would service 32 cars. Is that the original, what Wawa had proposed?
I believe so. Jerry, is that accurate? You probably are more familiar with
Honestly,
that.
I would ask Michelle that, but I thought it was a maximum of 16 cars.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
You just, yeah, I never heard the 32 before.
It will be 8.
I think it was 8 for 16.
Yeah, exactly.
8 for 16, and we now have it down to 6 for 12.
Yeah.
No, we have it 8 for 16 according to the OR district in the draft zoning, the draft curative amendment here. So it's exactly what Wawa wanted. Correct?
I don't believe so.
How do you not believe so?
As far as I know, they asked for 8 for 16, and we're down to 6 for 12.
No, we're not down to 6 for 12. It was just
Well,
mentioned that
John,
in the OR district,
you can say that, and I can say that. I don't have the draft of the ordinance in front of me. Michelle was asked by staff, I believe, recently to reduce the OR number of pumps from to 6 for 12. And if the ordinance that you're reading doesn't have that in it, then you may not have the most recent
I'm not reading
version.
an ordinance. I'm reading what Alan just said. In the OR district only, if the minimum requirement of, what was it, 4 acres is met, there will be a maximum of 8 fueling dispensers with 16 cars. That's what Alan just reported, was in the draft ordinance that they were presented at their meeting. I haven't seen that, but that's what Alan just said. Correct me if I'm wrong, Alan.
Okay, let me read it again. Some other notable changes where the lot size will be a minimum of 4 acres. There will be 6 fueling dispensers allowed, which equates to the service for a total of 12 vehicles. And
You can stop there, Alan, because
Whoa,
that
whoa.
answers the question.
No, let him finish.
And
Please.
in the OR district only, if the minimum lot requirements are met, there can be a maximum of 8 fueling dispensers. That's what the synopsis said.
8 for 16?
Mhm.
Okay, Micah, when we discussed this at staff, did we not come up with the recommendation that 8 for 16 be reduced to 6 for 12 in the OR district if you meet the minimum acreage size?
Yes, and I think that minimum acre size was roughly 5 or over 5.
I know there were changes in that regard as well. Again, I don't have it in
I
front of
don't
me.
have it
because
in front of me either. It's
And
like-
in any event, next Monday at the work session is when you can fine tune this and ultimately make a decision about which way you want to go with that.
Well, that's the
Totally.
recommendation that staff,
Totally
sorry, that's the
different.
recommendation that staff is going to make is 6 for 12 in the
Great.
OR
Thank
district,
you.
John.
Thank you.
This is Maureen. Can I just add, I don't have the planning commission minutes in front of me, but I can just add that I don't believe that Wawa is going to be able to do this with the lot requirement that they currently have. The 16 is only, you're allowed 1 additional pump for every half acre additional over 4 acres, I believe. So currently, as it stands, the plot of land that Wawa was looking for is not, they will not be able to have the 8. They would have to have more acreage. And again, I don't have the exact verbiage, but if you pull up the planning commission minutes, it is in there.
Thanks, Maureen. Bottom line is that while we would love to have the same dimensional requirements as the rest of the jointure, we're the ones faced with site-specific relief if we lose the curative amendment, the substantive validity challenge, and we've got to give a little bit. We're not giving away the store. We do have to negotiate in good faith to try to get this validity challenge removed without having some expensive zoning hearing, board hearings, and subsequent litigation. So we're doing our very, very best. One of the issues we discussed was the number of pumps, the minimum acre size, and I have a feeling that the ordinance that the Planning Commission just reviewed may not be the most up-to-date that Michelle is preparing for our review.
And again, I think basically our comments were directed to Michelle and Jerry so that those changes can be effectively redlined in. And if the board so elects to modify that even more, that's within your purview. But I really think the process has been very cumbersome, only because we're working with jointure partners that don't have the same situation in front of them as Newtown Township has. And
That's correct.
consequently, we have to spend a little more time on this than we really thought we were going to have to.
Bottom line is we'll have to read our packets very carefully for Monday's work session.
Certainly will, Dennis. I know you'll do your job.
Excellent. And maybe that'll be a live session so we can all be, see each other face to face. Any other further questions for Alan? Alan, thank you very much.
Okay.
Great day.
Well,
Next,
today.
next on the agenda, Finance Committee. George?
Just trying to get my video to work.
There it is.
You're on.
Okay.
Yep.
Good. I just wanted to give you a very brief update on the meeting that we had yesterday. We had about 23 people participate in the meeting. Meeting ran about 2 hours, and about 90 minutes of that actually discussed how the township could help local businesses reopen safely in the period that we have right now. So I'm going to try to condense that 90-minute discussion into a few key points over the next 2 minutes. And want to apologize to my fellow committee members that for expediency to try to get something ready for today, I did not share this with them. I didn't finish up everything until noon. So we will have a chance to go through things in detail. So here's a few of the key points as I interpreted them. There was concern that when we plan assistance that it has to be a long-term deal. We're not looking at provide that the assistance is only going to be needed for a 2 or 3 month period. Realistically, we're probably looking at a 9 to 12 month period. So we need to take a long-term range looking at this. The businesses are concerned because they're being hit with changing requirements. And sometimes it seems like to them on a day-to-day basis. And unfortunately, there's no single authority that they could go to get guidance, specific guidance for how they can reopen. There are the CDC guidelines, there's the PA state guidelines, there may be local guidelines to be followed. So it's a confusing process for them. They're doing their best. And really what it's come down to is the businesses independently of deciding what they're going to do on an individual basis. We had representatives from the Newtown Business Association. They said right now they are not collectively looking at a process that would fit all of their members. So I think what we're looking at is something that each of the businesses is looking to see how they're going to reopen. They do have the CDC guidelines. They do have the Pennsylvania state guidelines, but they're going to make their own decisions in terms of what they're going to comply with and what they're not. There was consensus that in order to get the public out to the businesses, that the public is going to have to feel comfortable that the businesses have taken the proper steps to protect public health. And again, there's no single way for a business to be evaluated and get awarded a check mark that they've met either the CDC guidelines or the state guidelines. Unfortunately, the specific licensing agreements have in essence control over the individual business. So if you have a bar, the Liquor Control Board has control over the liquor part of something. If you have a restaurant, the public health agencies have jurisdiction over that. So again, what we're going to have to rely on is businesses coming up with their own statement of fact in terms of whether they're complying with CDC or the state guidelines. There's no simple process in effect that we could have our restaurants or our businesses checked and then be awarded some type of status level that they could display in their window. So in terms of what we can do or what the township can do, if the township wants to see some sort of consistent reopening plan for all the businesses, the borough has actually passed a resolution that specifies what they all need to do. So, I mean, that's left to the Board of Supervisors if they would like to go that route. The township can assist in offering temporary changes to current regulations, like allowing outdoor tables, putting tables in parking lots, again, to increase the capacity that the restaurants can have. Potentially changing requirements for outdoor signage so we could bring attention to different businesses or shopping plazas to get information to people. Basically, the key takeaway that I took was that the businesses felt that there has to be some sort of widespread public promotion to tell people they're functioning, to tell the public that they're healthy, and to get people comfortable with coming back out. And several thoughts were passed along that way. One would be a marketing campaign to buy local, and again, point out why that is advantageous. Not only is it good for our community to keep our businesses alive and thriving, but it has a direct bottom line effect that if we don't have thriving businesses, the EIT, the other taxes that are paid to employees and everything, that will decrease. And so it's going to adversely impact the township finances. So the thought was there should be some sort of communications plan or communications program to help our citizens realize why it's important to support their local businesses. So how that would be rolled out, there were a number of business representatives that said they had contacts with marketing folks, particularly digital marketing folks, and that was another key point. The thought of doing like print campaigns or putting ads in newspapers or things like that, felt that had a fairly low priority. Basically, what the take-home message was, you're going to get information to people based on what they could find on their phone, and to a secondary amount, what they could find on websites. There are websites now that try to consolidate this information, whether we'd want to try to get volunteers to put together, say, a specific Facebook page or a website to consolidate this information. That's also something to consider. But definitely emphasis should be put on digital marketing campaigns as opposed to standard print campaigns. And then other additional methods of promotion, maybe have temporary signage along the roads that would give a website or a Facebook page address that people could go to for additional information on restaurants. We could do some sort of media flyer campaign where we could come up with a promotional flyer, again, tying into where people can find additional information. Those flyers could be distributed by volunteers door to door or at specific locations, shopping plazas, or potentially given out by merchants. When people buy something, they can get a flyer put in their bag when they leave. Another method that was brought up was to try to get information pushed down to people through homeowner associations. Again, the flyer campaign, that could be used to be distributed through the homeowners associations. Thought should be given to trying to do visual things like videos that could be either linked to a collective website or the township website or a YouTube channel, and to continue the outreach programs that are already in effect, like the restaurant bingo, and there'll be an upcoming virtual scavenger hunt for businesses and things. And lastly, what the township can offer. The township can offer links and postings on their webpage. They could offer to print articles in their quarterly publications, again, to remind the public to come out. And we do have existing television facilities in the township building. Maybe those could be used with the proper volunteers to shoot videos that we can make available, again, through different mechanisms. And so where do we stand right now? Basically, the Finance Committee is trying to take this amorphous group of ideas and boil it down to 4 or 5 selected topics that we'd like to move forward. And we'll be doing that internally over the next couple of days. And then the thought is we'll also continue following up with the business people that were at the meeting yesterday. And then ideally by, say, June 19th, in a week and a half, we'd like to have some preliminary ideas boiled down that we can make some preliminary recommendations to the Board of Supervisors. And then on top of this, we'd be ready. We realize that we're the temporary home for these efforts, that they will be transferred to the Economic Development Committee, and we can assist for as long as necessary to try to make that a smooth and productive transition. So that's basically all I have. It was a lot of talk, a lot of good ideas. We need to try to boil them down into actionable items that we can therefore recommend to the board.
Thanks, George. It kind of sounded like you gave a report for the Economic Development Committee. And I'm just curious as what was discussed about our finances, because we just had the consultants here going over that. But I didn't hear anything discussed about township finances. I just heard a lot of stuff about economic development, of which we're going to talk about that committee later on. So what ideas about our finances does the Finance Committee have?
Well, I mean, we've been limited. We've essentially received no further updates from eConsult. The presentation today was the first information, really solid feedback that we've received to date. Our mandate going forward is to look at the eConsult information and then to raise questions from their preliminary reports and then concentrate on coming up with recommendations to the Board of Supervisors. We're taking that pretty much as our mandate through the rest of the year, just as what I've been told, it's logical to assume that this economic development stuff for reopening businesses is really going to be the purview of the Economic Development Committee. So the more information that we can get, hard numbers to look at, the finances, once we have something we can work with, we can actually do something.
Well, I'm sure Mike could give you our past budgets to take a look at, just to analyze those to see where we're going in the future. And also, you presented a lot of ideas in regards to advertising promotions. Who's intending to pay for these promotional materials?
To be determined.
Okay.
We don't really know who would be doing them, who would coordinate them, and what they would cost at this point. Yesterday's meeting was pretty much a collection of ideas to start the ball rolling. And now we need to start delving into the details to find out, what's doable, what resources it would take, what finances it would take, and what the timetable would be to actually implement them.
Okay. Any other questions for George?
Yes, George, you mentioned the people who are attending. At least 3 of them were presumptive members of the Economic Development Committee. So I see going forward the role of the Finance Committee to be working in conjunction, because we have yet to form the Economic Development Committee, and I know in the ordinance for that, there's no set schedule for how they meet, whereas the Finance Committee has been or can be meeting regularly, and the Economic Development Committee has a few people in there who are very connected to the business community. So anything that the Finance Committee can do to help transition and work in concert with the Economic Development Committee, I think is proper for the Finance Committee to do at this stage. So I appreciate all the work that you guys are doing, and you put this review together pretty quickly to give to the board. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. We'll do whatever we can to help.
Excuse me. Once the Economic Development Committee is formulated, they will determine what days they're going to meet. That is in their purview, and formulating chairman, vice chairman, and so on. So that will happen once that meets. So it's not to say that, yes, right now they don't have a meeting date because they haven't been formulated yet. So they will have meeting dates. So to assume or make that assumption that there will not be any meeting dates set is totally wrong.
I didn't make that assumption at all. I just said it's going to take a while.
Anybody else have any questions?
It's going to take a while. Point of order. let me respond. I didn't say there would be no meetings of the Economic Development Committee. I said it will
None
take,
scheduled. You said there's none scheduled. Of course there's none scheduled because they haven't been formulated.
fine, let me finish. They will take some time before they get themselves organized. And in the meantime, the Finance Committee can continue to be examining this and passing on to the Economic Development Committee what, they have some ideas that they've already come up with. That's all I'm saying.
All right, but in the meantime, I don't want to see
Bill-
our finances neglected. I think that our finances should be talked about, analyzed, and in conjunction. Well, Finance Committee, you're going to be awful busy because you're going to have to do economic development, then coordinate with ESI and do our finances. So you guys are going to be a very busy committee. That's why I think the formulation of this Economic Development Committee, maybe we'll do that today. I have no idea. And then they could get on with the process of organizing and starting to get things done. Now, if they want
We like to be busy, and we'll be as helpful as we can.
liaison to the Finance Committee, that's fine. They could communicate through liaison. Someone from the Finance Committee could be a liaison on the Economic Development Committee and vice versa. And that's how you can communicate and maybe work in coordination. But I think that they have separate venues that they have to take care of. One, economic development, the other are finances. And that's,
Is my audio on? Can you hear me?
yeah, Peg, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. I was just going to say that one of the reasons that the Finance Committee got so involved with the details of what will be the Economic Development Committee was that what they do to promote the businesses in Newtown, in the Newtowns, is very important to the Finance Committee because we're looking at the financial aspects of what those businesses will bring in terms of tax revenues and things of that nature. So they are intertwined. Eventually, they're going to be two separate committees, but there was an integral reason that the Finance Committee was quite as involved as we were.
Phil, this is Mark. May I make another comment, please?
Sure.
Yeah, I agree with you that there was a lack of commentary on the finances, but I'm just speaking for myself at this point, not for the committee as a whole. We felt that we went through the financial reports and the previous budgets and identified some issues that were trends that were not looking advantageous. And what I felt was that at this point, we would have experts whose job is 40 hours a week to go do the additional digging into the finances, operational finances of the township. So it isn't that we're neglecting it. I think we don't have the information and we felt it would be redundant to duplicate what they were doing. So we're relying on their findings, and then we will analyze those and comment on those. So I don't want you to get the perception that we're neglecting that part of it. We just felt that it was smart to hand off at this point that analysis and then deal with it after the findings afterward.
Good. Mike, can you get the Finance Committee information on the budget, and then I guess also contact information for Dan, and maybe they could start coordinating something between ESI and the Finance Committee in regards to our finances, because I don't know, according to what Dan said, we better start doing something quickly.
I mean, the trends that Dan pointed out were the same ones that we identified over a year ago. We're chronically deficit spending at this point, and that has to be addressed.
Right, and that apparently wasn't addressed at your last Finance Committee. I'm sorry, I don't mean, I'm just being brutally honest. If you already had this information, I watched the Finance Committee yesterday, and all I saw was it was pretty much hijacked to be a quasi economic development committee meeting.
That was what I was led to believe the main purpose of that meeting was, because the impact on getting the businesses open. Excuse me, let me finish, please.
I don't know who led you to believe that, but whoever led you to believe that led you down the wrong road. And that's all I have to say.
Well, we hope we were still helpful yesterday. things. Our concern is to get the businesses open as quickly as possible because it has a direct impact on the finances. And my personal concern was that waiting for the Economic Development Committee to be formed and up and running may have taken another month or so, and it's a lost opportunity at that point to help our businesses.
Dennis, you had something to say?
Yeah, I did. Part of the reason the financial report was abbreviated yesterday, because we did start the first 5 or 10 minutes of the meeting with that, was that we knew that ESI was going to be doing the presentation this afternoon, and I invited the Finance Committee to be present for the presentation today, and they are. So yeah, we did get into economic development in terms of providing some ideas. But I thought that was a valuable exercise in brainstorming some ideas and giving a jump start to the Economic Development Committee, which actually I believe will make some appointments this afternoon and get them started and on their way. So I just wanted to provide them some information to get started with.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Thank you, George. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Let's see, moving right along here. Board members' reports. I will go right to the vice chairman.
Let me unmute. I have 2 or 3 things to mention. I attended 2 events related to the things going on in our country and violence and Black Lives Matter. And so the first one I attended was the vigil at the Garden of Reflection, which was to call for an end to violence and racism and injustice. So I think I already mentioned that the Newtown police force was there providing security, and that Chief Hearn was there in attendance as an official attendee. So I just wanted to, I'll let David elaborate on that a little bit more if he'd like to, but I'd like to thank David for inviting me to be part of the planning committee. The second event that I attended was in Newtown at Washington and Sycamore on Saturday afternoon, the protests by Black Lives Matter. And at that event, there were approximately 600 people. I as a guesstimate, 100 or 150 on every corner. And it was a peaceful rally, an inspiring rally, and mainly put on by young people. So it was a great event as well. The third report that I'd like to give is that our sewer authority project over here in Nob Hill and Devonshire is slowly nearing an end. There have been issues with the concrete contractor, and it's took a little while to get them going, but they're working on the street now. They're almost up to my house. And the pavement contractor, they're doing restoration of all the places where they dug the sewer line in the street. And that's probably about 2/3 completed. So that's a good thing. And it looks good, and hopefully it lasts for a couple of months until we get a chance to, we, the township, get a chance to get it repaved entirely. So those are the things I have to report, and thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Mr. Mack?
Yes, I too attended those 2 events. I wanted to also say that, as I said before, the police presence was noted, and that Chief Hearn was mingling with the crowd, which really speaks volumes, I think, for the Newtown Police. The primary sponsors of the June 4th vigil at the Garden of Reflection was the Bucks County NAACP and the Peace Center. In addition to the vigil, the sponsors asked participants to honor several pledges, and relevant to the role of a Newtown supervisor, I think, is the pledge to advocate for increased training of community policing and issues related to bias by talking with local police chiefs. And that's why I was asking the chief about the town halls and could we be doing that? And I hope we can move forward with that. I know that the training of the local police has been pretty good because recently 2 officers, Officer Ferraro and Rawa, were commended for de-escalating a dangerous confrontation with an armed subject. So that was, I think, I don't know the details of that, but that was a pretty inspiring thing to hear about. So the other thing I wanted to mention was the Newtown Human Relations Commission is planning to have a June 17th Zoom meeting, I hope, next Wednesday, June 17th at 7 p.m. And that agenda and meeting ID will be made available on the Township website by the close of business on Friday, June 12th, 2020. And the commission chair told me that one item for discussion is priorities and action items to combat racism in Newtown. That's all I have to report.
Thank you, John. Kyle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have the Park and Rec report. There are virtual programs and camps available. There's a piano mini, online driver's education, chess camp, engineering for kids, mad science and art yoga. Some other upcoming programs with Park and Rec are goat yoga, exploring archery for ages 5 to 17, basic dog training, BCBA Future Stars camp, lacrosse camp, and preschool dance camp. And that's all for the Park and Rec report.
Kyle,
Thank you.
has there been any mention of where some of these activities will be taking place? Or
No, I don't have the details in that report. I don't know if Mr. Lewis does or anything.
A lot of those programs will be in Clark Nature Center or in our various parks, or even in the parking lot here. We had a Zumba class last week. So all of these are outdoor camps, programs.
Great, thank you. David Oxley, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to just say that I attended the vigil at Garden of Reflection, and I was part of the planning process around that. Dennis was great in terms of helping me through that. Steve Sansero as well, Perry Warren. Loved the partnership between the Peace Center and NAACP and other organizations to get that together. We had reported over 10,000 people show up to that vigil just to show support and people's commitment to fighting racism and the fact that Black Lives Matter. And it was striking to me to see the amount of emotion, the amount of cars, the amount of people's patience and waiting in line. We had a tremendous amount of signs on the entrance and on the exit side for people to get involved, people to understand a little bit more about Black history. And, it was something that really struck me as a powerful time in our community. And I'm looking forward to helping the community tie together in a way of love rather than ripping each other apart. So I just encourage all of you and everyone as we continue through this process that we have conversations with each other, ones that are constructive, ones that are help people become more aware, and we can move forward in a better way. I've been encouraged by many folks in the community that they'd love to have more conversations. Obviously, Police Chief Hearn is very supportive. Kyle's reached out to me. And I appreciate all the support that I've received so far. And I look forward to everything else we're going to do going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I guess now we're on to, lost my spot here. Reports from officials. I guess our engineer is up now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first item we have is the Brixmore planning module. This is the planning module revision for the village of Newtown. Basically, as a result of different tenants, they needed to revise their planning module and request an additional 65 ADUs. These were accounted for in the updated Act 537 plan, so they're already accounted for. So basically, we reviewed the module and we deemed it complete. So we recommend that the resolution be signed by the official, appropriate municipal official.
Do we need a motion for this or?
Yes.
Okay, do I have such a motion? Motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion second. Any questions from the board? From the public? No public, but any emails? All right, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Oh, okay, passes 4-1, I'm sorry.
The next item we have is the certificate of completion number 6 for the Promenade at Sycamore Street. This was prepared by CKS engineers. So they recommend approval of the certificate in the amount of $33,087.50.
That's such a motion? Motion, have a second?
Second.
Motion is second. How much is left to be done at the Promenade? What's,
Is it
that
the,
much? Mr. Lewis, do you know?
There's a few.
Yeah, there's a few items that are left still. There's roughly almost $300,000 left of improvements remaining, so they have a decent amount of work.
A large part of that has to do with the signal, that traffic signal. They need to do a post-development traffic study as part of the land development agreement. So they're starting to work on that.
Okay, great. Any other questions?
Can I ask a question? Does this have to do with the car dealership there?
No, this has to do
No.
with the Promenade.
Promenade.
Where, excuse me for my ignorance, where is the Promenade again located?
Bernie Robbins.
Bernie Robbins, La Stalla, that whole little strip there.
The old Acme.
Verizon store.
Anthropology.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0.
That concludes my report.
Thank you, Leanna. Dave, solicitor's report?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First item on our report is the Villas of Newtown Phase 2. The developer submitted a request for a final inspection and final release of escrow. CKS made that inspection and submitted a punch list both to the developer and the board. Pursuant to the municipality's planning code, the board is required to take action on that report, and it is recommended that a motion be entertained to deny completion and advise the developer of the specific punch list items that are still required to acquire completion of that development.
Do I have such a motion?
So I'll make that motion.
Yeah, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Dave, this pertains to what the original developer has to complete, not the issues that we were presented with as a township.
Correct. This has to do with there's several items on the punch list, but the important issue here is the basin. There is a fitting in the basin that's not the right size, it's not at the right elevation, and they still haven't corrected that issue. Recall, folks came streaming into a meeting probably late last year sometime, saying that the basin didn't function. Well, it still doesn't, and Michelle is on top of that. And this request is just the developer, again, trying to get escrow funds released, and we're not ready to release them.
Okay, so it has nothing to do with what our positioning is in regards to completing some work. It has it in regards to what he has still not completed.
This is correct. This is phase 2. We do have phase 1 money. Micah, correct me if I'm wrong.
Correct.
We have that money. We're waiting for Michelle to complete a project, a list of items that we will be completing using that money. That's not complete yet, but this is phase 2. We don't have the money from that yet. And we're, again, if they keep stalling and they keep failing to improve it, we're going to have to take the money from that also. But right now we have not.
All right, so this is a motion to deny basically funding, okay, correct?
This is deny a request for completion of the improvements.
Gotcha. Any other questions for?
Question.
Sure.
Does this have the five items? Is that the punch list?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
It's a short list, but it's important stuff.
And again, Dennis, the basin is the key kicker that keeps this phase from being signed off on.
Gotcha, thanks.
It was supposed to be an easy procedure too, from what I.
Well, sure, it's a developer.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0.
Thank you. We will let the developer know accordingly. Second item is a discussion of the Sunshine Law. Just very briefly for everybody, the Sunshine Act is in full force and effect. The reason we can have a remote meeting and provide for public comment during those remote meetings is because of Act 15 of 2020, in which the state legislature approved having virtual or remote meetings like this, subject to obviously letting the public know, notifying the public of the date and time of the meeting and how the public can submit public comment. Again, there is no waiver of public comment or that requirement, and we have been holding Zoom meetings. We have been providing for public comment both before and during our meetings, and we have met the legislature's requirements for holding the legal meetings. I will agree it is not the best thing that we could possibly do. I think everybody agrees that a live meeting with real folks in our meeting room and making public comment is the way we want to get back to. But for now, we're not ready to go yet. We may be soon. But I did want to say that no meetings can be held by invitation only. All meetings must be publicized ahead of time. And if there is a limit on the number of in-person attendees based on spacing within the meeting room, that has to be on a first-come, first-served basis. It can't be by persons who are told that they can attend in lieu of other persons. But I think we have addressed that issue in sidebar conversations. And if there's any other questions on the Sunshine Act, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions for Dave?
Thanks, Dave, for enunciating that. I just wanted to mention that somebody had just a little while ago told me they sent in a comment by email, and I hope that's received. So the problem is making sure that we do receive any comments from email that are sent in.
Agreed.
So I hope that there's no problem there.
I agree. At each motion that we make, we should probably pause, a little bit before taking a vote to see if a public comment comes in on that. I mean, at meetings, generally, Phil will say, call the question. Well, he'll ask the board if there's any questions. He'll ask the public if there's any questions. And sometimes, depending on what the question is, I don't know if it's for a certificate of completion for the Promenade, but it may be for another more controversial matter. Members of the public can get up and speak. So maybe we just pause, see if any email comes in on that front, giving the public a little more opportunity to respond. I don't know. Micah obviously will be letting us know later at our second session of public comment what public comments have been received. But I don't know whether public comment has been received yet on any items of action that the board has taken today.
No.
Dave, also just to go into any kind of email, if we as a board member were to receive an email and that person sending us that email gave us permission to read it at public comment, that's also permissible too, isn't it?
Yeah, I would, I'd like to have the comments that are made at public comment mirror what would happen at a public meeting with the people standing up. When you ask for public, when we get to our second round of public comment on item 15, you're going to say, you ask Mike if there's any emails. Well, at that point, folks would stand up at the microphone in the meeting room and make their comment. Because we're substituting email submissions for that, those comments should be limited to folks that would have stood up at the microphone. Now, if someone has submitted something to you and said, please read this at public comment, then I think that we would rather interpret that broadly and say, yeah, let's read it and give the public the opportunity to be heard as broadly as possible.
And naturally, they would have to submit their name and address. I mean, it wouldn't just be.
Yeah, same with any other public comment. We certainly ask for names. We sometimes ask for addresses. Sometimes we get them. But I think a lot of time Maureen has that sign-in sheet where folks will sign and put their address. So we will get their full name and address. So that should be a part of any submitted public comment.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. Manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General fund balance as of today is $2,270,816. Plan expirations before the board with no action required. I have one item under my report that was put together by CKS. It's a resolution to resubmit the the Township's Act 537 plan of 2017. Please recall that it was previously approved and submitted to DEP. It was reviewed, and DEP had some general comments and revisions to be made. Those revisions were made by CKS, and a new resolution supported by the board, adopted by the board, is required to resubmit that plan. So the appropriate motion would be motion to approve the resolution to resubmit the Newtown Township Act 537 plan.
There's such a motion.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Second.
Second. Any questions from the board? Any questions from the public?
So Micah, this is just a revision that was made, and we're voting to accept the revisions of what would be another very long document.
Your vote correct. Michelle had made the changes, and it predominantly had to do with the calculation and the flow rates that came from the sewer authority to go into the interceptor. So the revisions were made. You're voting to approve the resolution that needs to accompany the document to DEP. And I have no public comment.
Okay. Any other board members comment? Okay. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Minutes, bills, list, and reports. Mr. Mack.
Okay, I move that we approve the minutes of the May 27, 2020 Board of Supervisors meeting.
Have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Okay, David, second. Any questions from the board? Any from the public? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0.
Okay, as to the bills list of June 10, I move that we approve the payment of our bills according to the bills list dated June 10, 2020, totaling $848,189.78.
Have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion is second. Any questions from the board?
I have a couple of questions. Note that this is quite a bit higher than last month's total bills. And I think that's primarily due to debt service fund transfer of $569,980 about for the payment for buildings loan on page 22. You can find that. Might ask Micah if he could provide more details about this. How much is outstanding on this loan? Where does the money come to pay back this loan? Is there a balloon payment I've heard about from the Finance Committee a while ago? I just need to get reacquainted maybe with that debt.
This is for the payment on the loan on the building. It's a fixed rate loan from the bank at 2.51%. This payment is higher than last year. I don't know specifically about a balloon payment. The payments are scheduled so they incrementally go up over the years, but in the final 5 or so years, they actually come back down. I would need to pull the actual document to figure out how much is remaining on that loan in and of itself. I don't have that in front of me. But the funds to pay that payment are from real estate taxes as part of the 2.65 mils that's associated with the debt service fund.
And that's obviously something we can't default on, or else they'll take the building away from us.
There'll be some sort of ramifications, yes.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. I also see there's a lot of camp and Parks and Rec refunds. The current bill, this includes nearly $38,000 in refunds, mostly for Camp Newtown. Do you have an estimate on the total amount of refunds that eventually be made? And I'm just curious, in a normal year, what expenses are involved with the summer camp and what the revenues are. I mean, I know they're profitable, they have been, and we're going to lose that this year, correct?
Well, the revenues last year were over $550,000. The expenses last year were, off the top of my head, were about $170,000. So you can see there's, roughly a $400,000 net profit on the recreation programs. Unfortunately, this is another victim of the COVID-19 pandemic, is that we had to essentially cancel all summer camps. Now we're beginning to develop some quote unquote camps, I'll call them, predominantly outside for to sort of try to supplement for some revenue.
Okay, that's all my comments.
Okay, any other questions on the bills list? All right, we have a motion and a second. I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0.
Okay, finally, I move that we approve the interfund transfers as per the bills list dated June 10, 2020, totaling $217,308.29.
Okay, have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. Motion and second. Any questions from the board? Any questions from the public? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you, John. I guess we're on to our second public comment. Micah, any public comment come in?
I do have two.
Okay.
One is from Andrew Mednani. And this one's sort of long, so bear with me. Dear Newtown Police Department, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Andrew Mednani. I am a physician and anesthesiologist and have been practicing with my husband in Langhorne. As most of the Newtown know, there was an incident in Newtown in front of Starbucks where my kids, 18 years old son and 22 years old daughter, they were walking towards their car after putting poster regarding George Floyd's death and were followed by a white couple with protester in their hands. This middle-aged lady who is a nurse, verbally and her husband physically assaulted my daughter, but my kids did not lose control and they handled it wisely. Everything was witnessed by a George school teacher and recorded on video. The DA charged the couple, lady with nothing and husband with social mischief, where he has to pay $300 for phone damage. Seriously, is this the justice we strongly believe in? I will ask every one of you a question. What would you do if they were your kids? Mr. John Mack, what would you do if they assaulted your granddaughter when she grows up? Or Mitch, what would you do if this incident happened to your daughter? We have always believed in law and order, and I have always been a good citizen following all the rules. I'm also a Rotary Club member and know chief of police and judge very well, but will never ask them for anything but James and Mitch. Now I feel insecure, scared and frustrated and want justice. You guys changed that. You guys charged that man $300. Do you think we really need that $300? What we need is a safer environment and community where no kid of any race, black, brown, or white, will feel scared to walk and hesitate to express their rights. Nobody in this world would even dare to touch or hit a kid for their innocent behavior. We have to set an example in this great community by appropriately punishing this couple so nobody else in the future will dare to do that. Also, how about that nurse not wearing a mask? Doesn't she know that with that yelling and screaming how far a distance she can spread a virus if she happened to be an asymptomatic carrier? In the video, she said she had it all day and got tired of the mask. Somebody please explain her that this virus is not get tired of spreading and killing more people. How ignorant. In the end, I would say I believe in Newtown's legal system and expect to have a better outcome of this incident, which has shaken thousands of people. Sincerely, Andrew Mednani. The second public comment is from John DeApril. What are the projections in the back of Johnny Mac's head? One week it looked like Star Trek, another time looked like flowers around his neck. Did he win the Kentucky Derby? It is very distracting and could be used for unlike projections that are otherwise offensive to people. His address is 118 Broadleaf in Newtown, Grant, the biggest and the best.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay.
Hi, Johnny April. Hi, Johnny DeApril. How you doing, Johnny DeApril?
John DeApril, can you respond?
I want to make a comment. I mean, here's somebody personally talking about me, and I just feel that I should be treated respectfully as per our ethics. It not only means our Board of Supervisors, we should address each other as Mr. or Ms. And to be called by what my late mother has called me by a stranger, I really resent that. Thank you very much.
Okay, let's wait to see if Mr. DeApril sends anything. Nothing?
I have nothing.
Okay. All right, let's get on to some old business. I have a couple questions from some old things that have were in the past. I guess these would both be directed to Mr. Mack. How is your working with the NBA task force going as the liaison?
The NBA does not have a task force. They are not doing much, I guess, except having some things like the Newtown Bingo. They're having a hunt where they want people to go to each store and see if they can pick up some it's a scavenger hunt. That's about all that I know that they're doing. Bill Sheffer, who is the chair of the NBA, was at the Newtown Finance Committee last night. I was also speaking to him about getting the Lower Bucks County Chamber of Commerce involved to help us bring, do things. For example, the NBA and the Lower Bucks Chamber of Commerce have sponsored these ribbon cuttings for new businesses. I was suggesting that maybe we can organize ribbon cuttings for reopening of old businesses to help promote what's going on. I would love to do that, something like that. But I was informed that even the Lower Bucks County Chamber of Commerce has a skeleton crew, and they're not doing very much at all, and at this time. So there's not much going on that front.
Have you approached them about formulating a task force, or they just they haven't been informed about this?
Well, I was going to do that at their recent business card exchange, which they had by Zoom, but it was all the time was taken up by Perry Warren and the NAC who sponsored it, and they didn't give me any time to say anything, so that never happened.
Okay, thanks. The other issue is an old issue, and it was about a gentleman who once came before us in regards to something being miscalculated on his EIT tax. And I think you were going to contact the tax assessment board and/or Keystone who handles that. And I was just wondering if there's any progress on that.
No, sorry to say, and I'll have to reconnect maybe with Micah to find out exactly who to contact, but it was my understanding that this EIT committee or whatever it is at the county level hasn't met for several years. So, I was just, not motivated after hearing that. So I'll reconnect with Micah and see what we can do with that.
Yeah, we just want the guy coming back again if we haven't tried to. But I think a person to reach out to, Mike, and maybe would be, isn't Bob Pellegrino pretty high up on the chain there, or ex-manager who's now the manager in Northampton?
Yeah, I believe he's the chairman.
Okay.
Okay, if I can get his contact information, I'll be glad to contact him.
Excellent. Any other old business? Okay, new business. I think we have something under new business in regards to the Economic Development Committee. We have some candidates that have expressed interest, and we could either take action right now or at our work session discuss, but we can't vote on at our work session. We'd have to wait until the next meeting. So I'm going to open that up for a discussion right now if everyone wants to chime in about this.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I have read through their submissions, and I actually I got a couple of my questions answered by asking for the resume and finding out there was a link for the one resume that I couldn't find. But I'm prepared to affirmatively for all the applicants.
Okay.
I would express the same opinion. I've looked at all of them. They're all eminently required, qualified, and they meet the requirements. We have Mr.
Okay, let's wait till we nominate them.
Okay.
Kyle, you okay with going ahead today?
Yeah, I think if we're going to move on, and we have to move quicker rather than later. So yeah, I'm good with all those candidates as well.
Yes, I'm completely fine with the candidates as well.
John, if you want to make a motion and include everyone's name, and yes, Dave.
One thing, how many folks are being nominated to be on the committee today?
I think we have 6.
I think there are 7.
Which falls within our parameters there, I believe.
Well, the current ordinance that establishes the Economic Development Committee says it shall consist of 11 members.
I think up to, Dave. I think up to 11 members.
Make your appointments. I'm not holding this up. I just want to double check that. Perhaps after you make your appointments, we will entertain a motion that if tweaks to the ordinance are required, that you authorize me to make those tweaks, and you'll consider it at your next meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, John, go ahead.
Point of clarification, are we looking at the enabling resolution was 2017 R8?
Yes, and it says 9 members. Not more than 9
2017
members.
R8. Okay, that I don't have. I'm looking in the code, which has 2003 R6.
Dennis, do you have it right there?
Dave, that's not been codified by E-code.
Okay, Micah, do you mind sending that to me? You probably did. I apologize. Shoot it over to me again, and I'll double check it.
Yep.
Thank you.
I would. That's the only way I got it. Is Micah sent it.
He's the source of all great things. What can I tell you?
Okay, Mr. Mack, you want to make the motion?
Yes, I'll make a motion that we accept the following members of the Economic Development Committee so that we may establish this committee. There is Mr. William Sheffer, Matt Peters, Mary Donaldson, Eric Scott Gold, Karen Miller, Joe Blackburn, and Dick Weaver.
Okay, a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Any questions from the board? From the public? Seeing none? Mikey, you look like you're seeing
Yep,
something.
I'm just checking. Nope. No, there's no public comment.
Okay, now call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. I guess, Micah, they'll be contacted in regards to their appointments and I guess work it from there in regards to their organizing. Okay. Any other new business? I have, yeah, Mr. Fisher.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for giving me the opportunity. I had a question around whether we want or need to do a resolution to provide some parameters for reopening. Of course, noticing that many establishments have reopened and started dining outdoors and expanded their capability to do so. But I just wanted to offer a couple of options. At our meeting on the 27th of May, we did pass a motion that when Newtown Township businesses when we move into the yellow phase, that we use our available outdoor space to conduct business while maintaining social distancing requirements to better cope with COVID-19 shutdown. And that was moved by Mr. Davis and passed 5-0. Is that enough, or would we like to go the resolution route? I actually had 2 resolutions that.
Why don't we ask Mr. Sander?
Yeah, good.
Once again, Mr. Calabro, I apologize.
No, Mr. Fisher asked if this was a sufficient enough, I guess, approval of a motion at that time, and do we need a full-fledged resolution in regards to this? Dennis, can you read it again, or?
Yeah, that's it. The motion that we passed on the 27th.
Okay.
So can you read it for?
I can read it. Mr. Davis moved to allow Newtown Township businesses, when moved to the yellow phase, to use their own available outdoor space to conduct business while maintaining social distancing requirements to better cope with the COVID-19 shutdown. Mr. Mack seconded it, and after a period of discussion, it was passed 5-0.
Yeah, well, that motion speaks for itself. I think there are also some CDC and state guidelines that need to be met, and I think that we need folks to just submit a plan to us showing that the exact location of any proposed outdoor dining and/or sales, so that it does, so we can ensure that it does not encroach into the public right-of-way or block a sidewalk from passage by pedestrians and/or persons with disabilities, and that all access for emergency vehicles is allowed, plus that the business meets the parking requirements for operating accordingly. So there are some things that can be added to that that I would recommend maybe we memorialize in a more detailed resolution to include those items.
And I had two sample resolutions here, one from the Newtown Borough, one from Montgomery Township and Montgomery County.
Yes, I've seen Montgomery Townships. Yep.
And it's short and sweet, the Montgomery Township one, and covers everything you said.
Good.
The
Why don't
Newtown,
Yeah, go ahead.
sorry, the Newtown Borough also has an application form, I believe. So I might take a look at that, but
Yes,
there obviously are restaurants already out there doing this, and so I don't wish that they be shut down because they were going ahead of us making this, resolution or whatever it is. So I wouldn't do anything to inhibit them. I mean, as my point of view, they're actually showing the way how this can be done. And we can also, everybody's learning how to do business a new way now. So we can learn from that experience as well.
I'm certainly not suggesting, doing anything retroactively, and I'm hoping we wouldn't do anything to hurt businesses.
Yeah, I don't think that the goal is to go shut everybody down and say start again. I do think, however, that we may go to some, if there are tables and chairs in the middle of a sidewalk, we're going to need, and I believe Micah has already done this, to go to folks and say, hey, hold it. We need you to show us where you're going to put these. You can't block the sideway. You have to. So we're working with local businesses to make it work for everybody.
And I think they appreciate that if you work with them rather than against them. And I do believe that some of them are setting standards already for how they want to do this. And it would be good if somehow we can share those standards about, say, for example, if you're a restaurant and you're required to have all your servers wearing masks. However, if the health of a server, for example, has asthma or something like that, where their masks inhibit their breathing, there has to be some way of handling those kinds of situations. I don't want to get down into the weeds, as Mr. Ferguson, our previous manager, used to say, but there are restaurants out there who are, handling this in slightly different ways, and we can learn from them, what the best practices are.
So could we put this on the work session agenda for Monday to maybe review? Now we can't vote on it, but maybe do a review so we know what we're doing for the following board meeting.
Sure.
Would the board like me to draft something akin to the Montgomery Township or borough, maybe a combination, what have you, document for review at the work session, and you see where you want to take it from there?
Sure, that'd be great.
That's what I'm proposing as well. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that would be a good idea, but let's please not make it extra long, because I'm not going to live that long to read pages and pages of this stuff.
Montgomery County's one, Montgomery Township's one is one page.
One page resolution.
All right, one page.
There's a word limit.
Yeah,
Well,
keep the bill low for us, Dave.
Well, you do get paid by the word, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay. Anyone else have any new business? I If not, I just want to bring up, we're discussing work session. We've discussed meeting in face-to-face again. Would everyone like to meet at this next workstation on Monday at our municipal building? And I don't see any reason why we can't have it again at an earlier time than what we usually meet.
Well, I am only, this would be the first time we would venture into that. It's the same as deciding whether I'm going to go out and eat outdoors at a restaurant these days. I know that Micah has prepared the meeting room for social distancing, and the has been cleaning and being very religious about it, I guess. So I'm a little bit confident, but I was just wondering, I noticed from discussions of PSATs that they recommend that if there is some board member who might be susceptible to this virus and could possibly die from it, that perhaps the allowance be made for a board member to participate remotely by conference call or by Zoom. I don't know if we can do that or not.
I take that as a no from Mr. Mack. I would like all 5 of us to be available, so if one of us can't, then we'll just have a Zoom on Monday at 11 a.m. How's that?
11 a.m., Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, I think that's what our Zoom was last time.
It works.
So just to clarify, the items on the agenda will be discussion of the resolution
Correct.
and discussion of the E30 ordinance.
Is there any way we can make it a little bit earlier, just because, you know, work's starting to pick back up for me,
And I was going to suggest a little later. So.
Well, how about
or later. I mean, if we can meet in the evening via Zoom, I'm fine with that too. It's just that it's becoming a little bit challenging for me to take the meetings that I need to make, you know.
well, is 1 o'clock okay, or that's bad too? 3 o'clock? I'm just looking at the, you know, at least Mike is in the office at that particular time.
Okay. I'll try and rearrange some stuff then. Okay.
Why don't we do this? David, reach out to me and let me know if earlier or later works better.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lewis.
Circulate an email amongst the rest of the board.
Yeah, I'll tell you right now, I have a meeting at 10:30 already, so
Okay.
keep that in mind.
Sounds
Let's
like
just keep it
later, maybe
Let's just
better.
keep it where it is, and I'll figure it out.
Well, wait, can Kyle participate at 11? He's got a 10:30
Yeah.
meeting.
Oh, okay, that's right.
Yeah, no, I can make 11. If
Oh,
I
you
have to-
can? Okay.
Yeah, if I have to drop off early, I just will. That's fine.
Dennis, what you had a.
Yeah, I have to unload a truck first thing in the morning, so it's possible I could be there at 10 or 10:30 if you needed to do it earlier, but then that conflicts with Kyle, so. Anytime after like 10:30, 11, I'd be fine.
John, you have any time constraints?
I'm retired. I have all the time in the world.
Why don't we shoot for, I mean, this 1 o'clock, where we just 1 o'clock, is that okay? David?
Yes, I'll make it work.
Well, no, I don't want you to sacrifice anything. I mean, if not, we could meet later, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock.
How about I just let Mr. Lewis know what I think is best. I mean, I'd like to meet later in the afternoon if possible, but we'll see what I can come up with in terms of rescheduling some stuff. I just scheduled a few appointments today, so I will rearrange. Thank you.
Excellent. Mr. Sander, any need for a executive session off the Zoom?
Not for any items that I am aware, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. And I guess we just need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seeing no opposition, everybody have a great day.
Thanks. You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Good one.